Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Werman. We're going to talk today about the NFL's Week 12 action, update our ongoing betting competition, talk a little bit about the U.S. World Cup run, then we'll get into NFL's Week 13 preview. So we'll start where we've been starting the last several weeks anyway, with the most interesting stories of the last week's NFL action. What did you find most interesting? The close games on Thanksgiving Day, Chiefs winning fairly easily against the Rams, going for two to win games instead of playing for overtime, or something else entirely. What was most interesting from Week 12?
Well, I did enjoy all the Thanksgiving games last week. I guess the one game that wasn't that close was the Cowboys Giants, although it ended up being a one-score game. But I think, and the Chiefs game turned out to be pretty boring because it seemed like the Chiefs did not want to score points against the Rams, who they I don't know, once they got into the red zone, they just decided to run the ball every time or throw the ball away. It wasn't. I think some of it was just ineptitude, but I think and good defense by the Rams, but a lot of it, especially the last two drives, were basically the Chiefs not trying to score and being very gentlemanly, even though the Rams were trying to call timeouts and were wanting the ball back with it down 2 possessions.
Yeah,
I don't know why the Chiefs didn't. Especially that last one, they were up by 23-10, and the Rams were calling timeout to try to keep the ball and keep it a 2-possession game. Why the Chiefs didn't try to throw the ball into the end zone.
yeah.
And, but I guess the most interesting games were the ones that were settled by the 2-point conversion victories. Both the Jaguars over the Ravens and the Chargers over the Cardinals. That may have saved the Chargers' playoff hopes. I guess it depends on what they do next week against the Raiders, but they're trying desperately to stay in the playoff race, and that kept them in it. But yeah, you think maybe they could have just gone for one and probably held out for overtime, but went for two. I think usually Brandon Staley, he kind of likes to gamble, and
Yeah.
so I guess this time it paid off for him. What did you find the most interesting this past week?
Well, I did not find either of those games interesting because I bet on both of them and I lost bets.
They both cost you, yeah.
So I was not happy with either of those. I just wanted to see the extra point. Then the correct team to get a touchdown and overtime.
I felt like that a lot of times. I had stupid plays that cost my team's chances of covering as well. That kind of odd phantom penalty call against the Titans on the field goal attempt by the Bengals to allow them to keep the ball and kneel down and win without having to relinquish the ball, and also the really stupid time management that former Golden Boy Jeff Saturday showed. That he seems to maybe be getting a little worse each week as a coach. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just.
You think he's gone from Golden Boy to washed up in like 3 weeks?
Well, I think
not even from being Golden Boy, just from being not even thought of in being like in a discussion to be a coach, to being a Golden Boy.
Yeah.
To now being washed up.
I think he's had a roller coaster ride, really, because nobody thought he was a very smart hire, other maybe than Jim Irsay. I don't even think Jeff Saturday thought he was a smart hire, at least if he was being honest. But it was one of those things. Also, like, well, maybe if you were offered a job that paid a lot of money that maybe you weren't that qualified for, you could still probably take it just to take it. So I don't really fault him for taking that job, but yeah, it was puzzling. And then especially it wasn't like the end of that Steelers Colts game. It wasn't like he only had one timeout and he wanted to be judicious with it. He had 3 timeouts, and like, you're not going to be able to call them in 30 seconds. it just made no sense. And it could have. They had like 3 chances. They should have called a timeout, and they didn't. They wasted about a minute and a half, and they had to kind of go for it on this crazy 4th down play, and it was just. And really, the Colts should have tied the game, and then perhaps wanted to send my to cash my ticket. But yeah, I think those maybe those finishes that cost us our bets were the most infuriating probably of the week. So maybe that's interesting in a way.
Or do you think now the maybe the beginning of the Jordan Love era actually is maybe one of the more interesting stories from the week, as Aaron Rodgers went down with probably an oblique injury.
Yeah, I wonder about that.
It looked like he was wincing a lot on a lot of his pass attempts, and then I think they said it was an oblique injury.
This was his best
anyway from how he was acting.
Yeah, it was his best game up until that point for a long time. Anyway, this season, maybe he had some earlier in the season, but it just came out that he had a thumb injury that he let slip this past week or so. And so then Jordan Love threw a pretty nice touchdown pass. The Packers didn't look any worse really with Love as the quarterback than Rodgers, but it's interesting. This maybe it is the end of the Rodgers era. I'm not sure, because that's sort of what happened with Brett Favre. We were a little surprised that the Brett Favre era ended and Rodgers took over. I think I think nobody really knew how good Rodgers was going to be. Maybe the Packers had some inkling, but oftentimes those are just those moves are done just to move on and try to start fresh. I don't think it was quite like the Mahomes Smith thing, where I think everybody in the building knew Mahomes was going to be really good. Nobody outside the building seemed to, but actually trade away Alex Smith and go with Mahomes in year 2. Maybe that was the same with Rodgers. I don't know, but I don't
like
think
they were like Mahomes was groomed. It was going to be a 1-year transition, and then he would only be called in unless if there was an injury, he would step up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he was going to have like an internship year, basically, right?
Yeah, like the Rodgers draft pick for Green Bay, Rodgers just kind of fell to them. He was supposed to go like number 1 or number 2, and nobody picked a quarterback. And then here's the best quarterback, and we already have Brett Favre, but let's take him anyway. And that was a little different from. I think that's a little different from even how the Jordan Love situation was handled, where they traded up to get Jordan Love.
Yes,
and so they wanted him as the quarterback, but I think they haven't seen really anything that would indicate that he's going to be great, but it doesn't mean he's not going to be fine. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if everybody in Green Bay just wants to get rid of Rodgers. He's too much of a headache. Everybody hates him. He's just a jerk. Did you hear about his this interview with DeShone Kizer? I think it was DeShone Kizer, where Rodgers, like the first question Rodgers asked DeShone Kizer when Kizer was going to be the backup quarterback in Green Bay was, "Do you believe in 9/11?" And he had this like 9/11 conspiracy that he wanted to peddle.
I did not hear that.
Yeah, that was I saw that today. It was
so he was trying. He wanted to see if was it a test to see if he was like impressionable, or
I think he actually
Rodgers actually is just like a big conspiracy guy.
I think Rodgers is a big conspiracy guy. I think that's what it is. I think he thinks he's the smartest guy there is, but I think he's smart for a dumb guy. And in football, you're around a lot of dumb guys, and if you think you're really smart, it's sort of like, yeah, I think that's sort of what it is.
Yeah,
I don't, just because he's got the anti-vax stuff. It's not quite as bad as something like Kyrie Irving with his Jew conspiracies and flat Earth positing, but it's the same kind of mindset.
Puts up with them like from the ownership side. I think I would think that they would just try to get rid of him after one of those things. But like every year, it's another one Another different, completely asinine thing that comes out of that becomes like a whole thing around Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, but it's like yeah, it's one of those things where I think he thinks he's really smart, and maybe he is a little smarter than the average basketball player, or like
Yeah,
Rodgers might be a little smarter than the average football player.
yeah.
But when it like, but they're
We're
not
taking it out of
as
that element into any
yeah,
other part of society.
yeah, it's a weird yeah yeah. So yeah, it's so yeah. Aaron Rodgers tested Deshaun Kaiser about um, uh, 9/11. He goes, thing
But
comes out of Aaron Rodgers' mouth
has Aaron Rodgers' conspiracy about 9/11 been proven wrong though?
was, "Do you believe in 9/11?" And Kaiser goes, "Yeah, what? Why wouldn't I?" He goes, and Rodgers goes, "Oh, you should read up on that." And I gave him like all this conspiracy
Oh wow,
literature and stuff, and
great.
and yeah, it's yeah. So so yeah, I could see that he's more trouble than he's worth probably to keep maybe at this point, especially given that Green Bay's not successful with him anyway, and maybe they could trade him while he still has a little bit of value. You think? But he still has a couple years left on his contract, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think he signed a couple-year deal not too long ago, maybe even before this season. 'Cause I think he was getting close to the end of the contract before, and then they re-signing him.
Yeah, he's scheduled to make $60 million next year,
Crazy.
59.5 million
I
in
mean, who's gonna want
2023,
that? Who's
and
gonna want to take that?
49.3 in 2024. So yeah, um he signed a 3-year, $150 million deal basically.
So there's just 1 year left on it.
There's 2 years left,
Okay, so
and the
he's
big
still
year is
due.
next year where he gets $60 million.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, who's going to take that on? Or I mean, they could restructure it, I guess, but who would take it on like willingly?
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't see where he can go. Like they had the opportunity to try to move him to seemingly where it made sense for him to go to Denver
That's why Denver
a year
hired.
ago,
That's why Denver hired his drinking buddy
right? But then move never got never happened, and then
coach.
they
Was
re-signed him to a 3-year deal. So I don't quite understand what any of that was. Goo, yeah, I don't know. Well, and what do you think the 49ers have to be thinking now? Because like they may have the best team in the NFC with Garoppolo, and they've already bet their future on field on not
on
field
Trey Lance.
Trey Lance, yeah.
Well, he's still on a rookie contract, so that's
Yeah.
not the most money. There are rumors, I think, that Tom Brady, if he plays another year, would go to San Francisco. Um, and
Is that the only way they could get out of keeping Garoppolo longer? Because you'd think
I
they'd
think
almost have to keep him for at least a couple of years. Just
I think Garoppolo's just on a 1-year deal.
no, I know, but I mean, he's had this much success there as
Mm-hmm.
anybody has recently.
Yeah, yeah,
How could you
especially if
not
they.
want to keep him as a franchise if he can take him deep into the playoffs multiple times?
Yeah, he's. Yeah, I don't know what they. I think they're stuck with him, sort of. It's
I mean, they aren't contractually, but they seem to be
like they do. They go
becoming more entwined with him as being their future.
if you can go to the Super Bowl with him, or NFC Championship game, 2 NFC Championship games in the last 3 years, and then another threatening run this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems like. Yeah, I don't. It's one of those things where they're like the 49ers were too good to get a new quarterback, and then the 1 year they were bad, they picked like the worst guy,
yeah.
Trey Lance, who he played like 4 games as court. It's like a ridiculously low number of games at a Division 1 AA level or something, and hadn't played for over a year with COVID, and then he hurts himself. So like it was a risky, and they could have had Justin Fields or I guess Mac Jones would have just been Garoppolo 2.0, but
Yeah.
Fields might have been something. I think he'll end up better. I guess you never know. Maybe Lance will turn into somebody like Jalen Hurts and be that kind of quarterback. But yeah, there's a quarterback like what or like is Russ like what are they gonna do about Russell Wilson in Denver next year? Are they gonna just hope a new coach will fix things?
I don't know that it can. To me, it seems like if Russell Wilson could overcome his coach, he would have shown some flash of, during a game where he just get fed up and be like, I'm not running any of these plays. I'm just going to call whatever play I want to call. If he was capable of doing that, he would have done it at least once, right?
Yeah, you'd think he'd have like a breakout game.
But he still only has 8 touchdown passes on the season.
Yeah, it's hard to say. So much
In like 11 games. That's not impressive.
No, it seems like maybe Seattle knew something that the rest of the league did not. At least that's what it looks like right now.
Well, then you have to wonder though too, is like, was he actually outplaying his ability in Seattle with just like the play calling that the Seattle staff had, or
I don't know. I think
what? Because it seemed like he wanted to throw a lot more than they were wanting him to, and he would have decent numbers, but they won a lot of games.
Yeah, it was mostly defense, but but when he threw the ball well, he could throw a really good deep ball, and so it was always very impressive when he got thrown to those rainbow passes to to Lockett or to the other Metcalf or any of the other receivers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those. It's also one of those things where is an NFL season as indicative of because there's only 16 games, and if you have a slump in like you can have a slump for a whole season, whereas I think it's a little harder maybe to have a slump for a whole season in baseball or basketball that people have down years, I guess, but it's not as pronounced because they have a lot more games to recover.
Yeah, I think in baseball, like a slump, looks worse because you only get a couple of at bats per game. So like if you go like over 10, that could be across 3-4 games. Or if you, throw 10 incomplete passes in a row, you might not even be out of a half yet. So you still have time to recover within a game. Right. So I don't know. I don't really know that there really shouldn't be season-long slumps in football. I mean, a team might slump. Well, I would think like an offensive player, especially if it's a quarterback, has more ability to control their slump because they can throw shorter passes. They can run plays that are, just to get them out of it. As long as the coaches realize they can do that anyway. But
basketball players can go through slumps that are multi-game.
Yeah.
For shooting and things like that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's similar for a quarterback.
Maybe. But I mean, usually players sort of like shoot through their.
Yeah, but then but after 4 or 5 games in the NFL, that's almost that's a third of the season. Where in the NBA, it's only 4 games out of 82.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem as I just think because maybe it's each game is so important. Having one bad game is like having several bad games in another sport. But
true. I don't know. I think the Russell Wilson's play in Denver may say more about the quality of Seattle's coaching than Denver's, like as a team, their ability to play.
So
Denver's coaching staff I don't think much of, nor do I think much of the Raiders coaching staff. But
well, the Raiders are doing better than Broncos. They've won 2 in a row, you could say.
Yeah, but one of them was against
the Broncos.
Yeah. So right, I don't know. That really means a whole lot. The Broncos just can't score any points.
So would you rather have Aaron Rodgers in his contract or Russell Wilson in his contract?
Like Aaron Rodgers is closer to retirement, so I'd rather have him.
So Wilson has 4 more years in his deal for almost as much money as per
Yeah.
year as Aaron Rodgers is making. So
Yeah, if there's any chance that Rodgers decides he retires early, he might be able to get out of that contract even earlier. So I would go that route. But I think Rodgers has more ability for like having a big game or a big season. I wouldn't want to deal with any of the media that like swirls around him though. So
well, Russell Wilson just turned 34 years old
yeah.
today. This is his birthday. So you'd think that's usually you're still pretty good as a quarterback in your early to mid 30s. At least that's what lately. We have Peyton Manning and Brady and Breeze and
Yeah.
Roethlisberger and
Brady
Aaron
was
Rodgers
just finishing the first half of his career at 34.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, Rodgers is 38. He will be 39 in like 3 days. So he's 5 years old. Rodgers is 5 years older, almost exactly, than Wilson. So
Yeah.
Wilson, when he finishes his contract, will be younger than Aaron Rodgers is right now. Yeah. So it seems like he hit a cliff or fell off a cliff much more quickly than a lot of good quarterbacks in the last 10, 15 years.
So I guess is this from if you were the Broncos ownership, who would you rather have as a quarterback? Or if you're like the Broncos coach, who would you rather have as quarterback? Who am I in this scenario though? I was asking like
if you were let's say if you were a fan of
the
Broncos.
Of the Broncos. Ooh, I can't I don't think I can even think that way. It's too hard.
I wouldn't want either of them, but I guess Rodgers, you pick Rodgers because there's only 2 years and it's
right. Well, like that I mean, from the Broncos' perspective, that buys you 2 seasons to figure out who your quarterback's going to be 3 years from now, right? And then,
and you could also say maybe he turns it around. This is just a bad year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from the Broncos' perspective, they should have just gotten Rodgers, right? Now, knowing that where they are this season, right?
Or they should have tried not just they should have gotten a different coach, I guess, and not tried to get Rodgers with they wanted the coach to bring in Rodgers, and that didn't end up working. And they got this is one of those things where we both thought that it was a bad hire because I don't think Nathaniel Hackett was an offensive mastermind anywhere. And I think we talked about his dad wasn't a very good.
I think though, realistically, I would rather have taken Nathaniel Hackett as a coach than the Raiders choosing their coach.
Or Justin Daniels.
Because he's already been proven to be terrible as a coach within the same division. Because he was an awful coach in Denver. And then he went elsewhere and was an offensive coordinator and did really well. And then the Raiders went and made the same, bad decision. Knowing that he wasn't a good coach, a good head coach anyway, right? They already knew that. It's not like he was far away in the NFL world that the Raiders wouldn't have been aware of him as a coach, right? They saw him.
Yeah.
So like they shouldn't have known better there. I thought that was at least Hackett would be an unknown at that job, right? So like maybe you have something good, maybe you don't have something good, but you'll find it out relatively quickly and you can move on if it's not right.
Yeah. Well, it seems like McDaniels is probably going to get another year, from what I've heard rumblings from in Oakland.
Las Vegas, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, Las Vegas. Yeah, it just still seems like Oakland.
Yeah.
The Chargers still seem like they should be in San Diego.
Right.
I don't quite do that with the Rams. I don't put them in St. Louis as much as because it's been a few more years.
Yeah. The Washington football team, like do you still refer to them as football team or
I think of them as
previous name.
Yeah, as
The Cleveland Guardians. That one's hard too. I don't know.
Guardians. Yeah, it's yeah. Everybody picks these lame names. It just, I don't know what, they're so inoffensive to be,
Yeah.
like, they're just bland. They have there's no catch. Like we were talking about, like, the Cleveland Spiders would have been a great name,
I think so too.
and it also would have been connected to Cleveland's baseball past.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's interesting. Kids would like it. It's
Maybe some kids would find it frightening, but it would still
fun.
it would still be cool logos though.
Yeah, and it's like it's different. It's interesting. It's not just like in baseball, what do you guard? There's nothing. I guess the plate if you're a catcher, but you can't do that anymore. It's one of those, like, it doesn't make it like it's. I guess means it's sort of, they said it means something for people in Cleveland, like that bridge or whatever. But I think they just kind of
The
shoehorned
Guardians of
that.
Traffic.
I think
Maybe they were trying to just connect with the Marvel cinematic universe somewhat too, with like
Guardians of the Galaxy.
I guess that seemed to be like, maybe that's what they were trying to think of, but
yeah,
I mean, it ended up being just like a really not interesting way to keep the old Indians logos by just adding a few extra like
letters
characters
yeah.
before the.
They can keep the DIANS.
Yes. The
last 5
letters part. They just had to like modify the first, like just one side of the jersey had to change. They could just pull off one half of the patch.
Yeah.
New patch on, and it's like it's the same thing.
Yeah, that was the Commanders. I think they picked because they, like, ownership did not want to change their name at all, so they just didn't care, and they just picked whatever the blandest.
Well, they should have just left it as football team then. If they really didn't,
I think the football team was funny. Daniel Snyder's, yeah.
But there were cooler names in their like possible names they chose from that were like on the final list. There were better names than Commanders in that group. So I don't know why they chose that.
I don't like any. I don't. Well, I think there's also the most recent. Do you like the Seattle Kraken, the hockey team nickname?
I think it's one of the most interesting names that they've chosen. I like the Las Vegas Golden Knights too. I thought that one is interesting. I don't know what Knights have to do with ice hockey, but
well, I think it's because
it's made for cool logos though.
Because Vegas is known for its nightlife and just glitziness and things like that. So Golden Knights, but then with a K rather than an N. I don't know.
Which is like you're supposed to be a picture like suits of armor. But
they do have. But so I guess they did have the Excalibur Casino in Las Vegas. So that's something. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, it seems like it's just been done by committee, and nobody really thinks it's good, but they kind of talk themselves into it, and they think that any name is. I guess we kind of thought that though in Kansas City when they changed the Wizards to Sporting KC.
Yeah,
most people thought that was a dumb name, but I think it's caught on.
Yeah, it's more of the traditional soccer club naming scheme.
Yeah.
Than what American sports are typically known for. I do think it's funny though. A lot of times it's like a team that a company that like sponsors the team is what provides the name. And like for Sporting KC, like the company that owns Sporting KC is called Sporting KC, that is created specifically to run Sporting KC soccer team.
Yeah,
the new like XFL restarting. Have you looked at the team names for those?
No, let's check those out. What are the?
So here's the list. See which names you like of this group. Okay, the Arlington Renegades.
Okay.
DC Defenders. Houston Roughnecks.
I think those were some of the names that they had a couple of years ago.
I think so. Too. Orlando Guardians. There's a Guardians. Again.
Another Guardians? That's stupid.
San Antonio Brahmas.
Like the Bulls? Is that like Brahma Bulls? Or
like,
what does that have to do with San Antonio?
I think The Rock has an ownership's maybe one of the primary owners of the XFL now, actually, right? Dwayne Johnson. That was one of his nicknames was the Brahma Bowl. So he probably insisted on that.
Okay.
The Seattle Sea Dragons,
Yeah.
St. Louis Battlehawks,
I think that was the name they've had.
and the
Yeah.
Vegas Vipers.
They're very USFL sounding
Yeah,
to me. So like it sounds like those sound like made up teams in like a video game from like Nintendo in the 80s that
yeah,
couldn't license the real team names.
right.
So I guess it's okay. The Vipers is kind of fun. The Roughnecks, I guess, is oil related. I don't know. We have a Sea Dragons and a Battle Hawks. So like we have like the Seahawks together. And then like
Right.
the stupidest one is the Guardians, because we already have a Guardians that it's like,
That was already stupid. And
yeah.
but in a different sport. I guess Guardians makes a little more sense in football.
Yeah.
If you're a defensive minded club.
Yeah. The DC Defenders.
Yeah.
It's a Guardians against the Defenders sounds really boring to me because
Yeah.
there's no offense there.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to see them face each other, right?
Yeah. I think the Vipers are like the Vipers sounds like it sounds fun. The Renegades I think sounds kind of fun. I don't know. They're fine, I guess. They're other than the Guardians, I think. Like
And defenders.
yeah, I don't like well, I guess it's at least it's a different name than
Then Guardians.
an already lame MLB team name.
Yeah.
Like who thought of that? Like was that
Who okayed this?
yeah. They were the New York Guardians at one point.
Yeah.
And there was the Tampa Bay Vipers and the Los Angeles Wildcats. So I guess these are just kind of continuations from the previous XFL.
Yeah.
So I guess the XFL came up with Guardians slightly before Cleveland came up with
Yeah.
Guardians, which makes Cleveland even more lamer, I think. But I don't. Yeah, I would like to see a decent spring football league, though.
Yeah.
We want to talk about you want to talk about fall football? Talk about our bets. We sort of
Sure.
have. We've sort of touched on those.
Yeah, let's recap our competition. What was your first pick?
My first pick was my only winning pick of the week, and that was the Broncos Panthers under. I think it was under 35.
35.
Is that right? 35. And it looked a little dicey for a while because Denver scored a touchdown kind of late.
Mm-hmm.
And made the final total 33, 23-10 Panthers won. Yeah. So that made it a little bit iffy. And then the Panthers had an opportunity they could have scored at the end, but they did not kick a field goal to go for the over or touchdown to go for the over.
Right.
So yeah, that one was my winner. Yeah, I think you said Denver's only been over one time this year. They're 1-10 against the over under.
They might have been 1-9-1.
1-9-1.
They may have pushed one, I think.
Yeah. So
I think that's what it was.
Maybe I should have gone for Denver under again this week, but I didn't. But yeah, so that was my one winner.
No, 1-10. 1-10.
1-10. Well, how about you? What was your first?
My first. Well, yeah, I had those two games with the 2-point conversion at the end of regulation.
Oh yeah, we talked about those. Yeah.
Where Jacksonville could have kicked a field goal to try to go send it to overtime. Where I would have liked that to happen, so then Baltimore had a chance to get a touchdown because I had Baltimore -4. That did not work out. Jacksonville ended up winning, getting 2-point conversion, winning the game outright in regulation.
Justin Tucker almost kicked a 67
that was
yard field goal.
That wouldn't have helped me though.
It wouldn't have helped you. Yeah.
Once the 2-point conversion succeeded, my chances relied entirely on a kick return.
Yeah.
was like the best chance I had anyway for my bet anyway. Yeah, that was. It looked really good from the back shot. But yeah, it came up much short, 5 yards or so short.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, it landed in the end zone. Yeah.
So my second pick was another of the 2-point conversion games, where the Chargers, rather than playing for overtime, decided to go for two, and ended up beating Arizona at the last minute of the game or so. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting anyway that it doesn't happen too often. It happened twice in the NFL, and they were two of the three games that I picked.
Yeah, usually the teams, well, I guess usually the teams want to tie and go to overtime, especially if they're playing at home. So I guess the Chargers were on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess also maybe you can say Jacksonville's a young team that you think that they didn't fancy their chances against Baltimore in overtime. So maybe that was the better move for both teams.
Yeah.
Also, Staley, he's a gambler. He likes to play there. He likes to go with the analytics a lot, which leads to lots of leads to results that are not ideal a lot, and those get criticized more than just following through and doing the sort of typical dumb coaching move. So I think he gets blamed more for his work than otherwise, because that's why coaches, punt and rather than go for fourth down, because they feel like, oh, it'll be the defense that gets the blame. It won't be me for messing up the play call, or something like that. It's a way of, it's just mostly shifting blame, and it's
so
usually
it's vanity, is what you're saying.
Vanity. Yes, vanity. Speaking of vanity, Jim Irsay's pick of Jeff Saturday was my second bet. I guess it was the third in chronology. But it was like your 2-point conversion bets. These two bets that I lost on the spread were fairly similar in that late game irregularities, we could say, or oddities, cost my teams from potentially covering the spread. The Colts were favored by 2.5. They were driving against the Pittsburgh. What had been a good game. In at least the first half was really good for the Colts were looked pretty good at times. Pittsburgh looked pretty good at times. It seemed like the Colts were going to tie the game. They were moving the ball down the field. They had like a minute left, and then for some reason they had 3 timeouts. None of them were used when time was running down, and there was a scramble for a 4th down play, and Jeff Saturday didn't fall into timeouts, and it was just a stupid clock management. I can't remember when a team had 3 timeouts and did not, with under a minute left, and did not want to use one of those timeouts.
Yeah.
It would have been something you maybe could say, well, they only had, if it had been 1 timeout, you could say, well, maybe we didn't want to call the timeout, then we wanted to wait till later. That could have maybe been defensible. But having 3, when by that point you don't even have time to probably call all 3 timeouts if things go right for you, what is the point of having those timeouts? You can save.
Yeah, you can't take them with you. So what are you gonna do?
So it was dumb, and the Colts.
Maybe they get to apply them next week. They have.
The Colts failed on 4th down because, well, they could have called timeout and discussed a play. They should have called timeout on before the 3rd down play, or I think Matt Ryan had like an 18-yard scramble, and they just let the clock run down and then ran for it. It was just silly. And then so the Titans were playing a tough game against the Bengals. The Bengals were up by 4. It looked like they were going to kick a field goal to go up by 7. And you thought, well, if the Titans can score in the last couple of minutes, they can tie the game to overtime. The Titans were 1.5 point underdogs when I made the bet. But the Titans were called for a strange penalty. It seemed like, I guess it was somewhat similar to the penalty the Raiders were called on against the Chiefs. When they had the defensive holding call on a Chiefs field goal that they missed.
Yeah.
And Chiefs, I was a few weeks ago when the Chiefs were hosting the Raiders, and then the Titans, I guess they pushed the center too hard, after he snapped the ball. But like you had mentioned before we were on the air, like the official who called it didn't seem like he was really in a position to make that call compared to some of the other people on the field, and that allowed the Bengals, who were already up by 4, to just kneel down at the end of the game. So there were no like both of our, I guess all 4 of our missed bets this week involved squandered final minute decisions, even though maybe we were headed the wrong way anyway. But still, it was
whatever chance we had was extinguished by decisions made off the field. Potentially,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. It just kind of shows you how razor thin those margins can be in the NFL. And we haven't discussed your winning bet. You were 1-2 like I was 1-2 this year.
Right. And that one was, I took the 49ers favored by 9 points at home against New Orleans, and they had
it was a boring 13 to nothing win.
Yeah. So that's the best way to cover the spread, is just don't allow any points and then score whatever you can. And right, that seems like a winning strategy, right?
Yeah, that would have been a nice game to put the under on as well.
What was the over under on that one? Was it?
At least 35. That was Denver was the lowest.
Right. But I mean, -9 is a pretty decent spread.
Mm-hmm.
So the over under had to be relatively high, right?
I have it at 43.5. That's what I saw. But it may have not been 43.5, depending on where. So
43.5. That's what this one was, yeah.
So it was 30 to 31 points under.
Right. Not close. Yes. So both of us were 1-2 this week. So our overall season records are now, you're at 15-18, minus $300 on the season.
I was at 15-18, right?
Oh no, that's right. No, 16-20. Yeah,
I'm at 16-20 now.
sorry.
Yeah, minus 400.
Minus 400. I'm at 16-19-1. This is the one push. Minus 300.
So you have lost yes, $100 less than I have lost over these 12.
Correct. Yes.
Weeks. So we are still very close. It's still anyone's game. We'll see what lucky week 13 brings for us. I don't know if, yeah, I don't know if it can get worse for us. We've shown this was a not great week, but it was certainly not our worst week combined.
Correct. We've been shut out before. Yeah. as a duo, even, right?
We were 0-6, I think, one week. And
yeah,
we've been 1-5. We've been
yeah, yes, but not great.
But we're still in striking distance of breaking even on this season.
Yeah, I can get to 500 this week if I got all 3 picks right.
Yeah, 19-19-1. I can get close
within
1.
Yeah, within 1. That's awful close. So yeah,
I think we're 19-20, and then be poised for a big week next week. Right. But yeah, we'll talk about next week's bets in a little bit. Do you want to talk about the other football going on?
An all
right
football week for us. No baseball discussions.
No baseball. No, it's football, soccer going on, the World Cup. It's in Qatar, the probably the worst and least likely place that a non-corrupt organization would have their World Cup, given the fact that the country only has maybe 2 million people, and it's very, very tiny, and the World Cup is usually held in a country that's large and has many available stadiums to play in. Mm-hmm. And not having it in the Middle East would have been, even having elsewhere in the Middle East, like in Egypt or even Saudi Arabia or someplace that has people and resources that aren't just oil money and bribes.
Yeah. Usually
but-
some kind of history of, a past in the sport was usually part of.
Yeah, or it's a little bit like like when they had the United States, it was a big market, maybe future market for the sport.
Yeah.
Because even the United States though had made World Cups in the past. Qatar has not made any, but I don't think the Qatar sports market is going to be was an untapped market or anything like that either. So you could maybe say, oh, maybe they'll put it in, having a World Cup in China would be a thing because China's historically not that great in soccer. I think they've made a couple World Cups, but it would be like holding it there or in India or someplace like that would make sense because that's a very large population. It's a very
Right.
large, that would be a place where you could say the game could grow.
Yeah. Well, it ends up being the marketing tool to attract new fans.
South Africa maybe was a little bit like that when they had that in South Africa. At least getting the African continent more visibility and things like that. But yeah, this Qatar, the World Cup. I guess the games haven't been too bad, and the games the United States have played in have been very competitive. All three of them. They tied against Wales, even though that was a game probably they should have won. They tied. Drew, depending on what you want to call it, against England. Another game where they may have been the better team, even though England is the better team. But at least in that game, the United States played just as well or better most of the game. And then today's game against Iran, the United States won, and that sent them into the second round, into the knockout stages, as they call it. Did you take away anything from the game against Iran?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing looking forward is Pulisic's injury.
Yeah, he scored the goal and then was seemed like he was hitting the groin as he scored.
Said it was like goal. Like a bruised pelvis, I guess is what they've.
So they call it. I know last time I saw it, they called it an abdominal injury.
Yeah. I think they said a little bit more about it later. I think that maybe a bruised hip or something maybe is what it ended up being.
Yeah, pelvic contusion I've seen.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, going forward, that may be the most important thing. The team seems really heavily reliant on him taking most of the chances, really, for the team, it seems like.
Yeah, he's their goal scorer, I think. They don't really have a traditional forward striker who can score goals. Pulisic's more of a midfielder, but he's more attacking than a lot of the other midfielders on the team are. He was the one who was in the right spot in this game, and he's the at least most successful player in international soccer, really. So he's the biggest name right now that they have. So I think to beat the Netherlands, who they're going to play in the round of 16, I think he needs to be in there. But this is the United States has made it into the knockout stages, so they're one of the top 16 teams in the World Cup. So that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Especially having not even qualified for the last World Cup.
Yeah, not even qualified in 2018.
So qualifying was a big win to start with, and
they flamed out. And
it seems round is a big deal.
It seems like they're probably the only team from CONCACAF that is going to make it into the second round. Mexico has they have an uphill battle. They have to beat Poland tomorrow, and then they have to have a few other things fall their way. No, they have to beat Saudi Arabia. They beat Saudi Arabia tomorrow, and the Poland-Argentina match there's a few different scenarios, but I think Mexico right now only has like a 30% chance of advancing, even if they win against Saudi Arabia. Yeah, they have to. I think they're going to have to rely on goal differential or rely on an upset by some upset by Poland beating. I think they can win either if Poland wins or if Argentina wins, but in most cases it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It just
I did see that there were actually some like riots in Belgium after their loss. Was it yesterday? For us now, when this is being recorded anyway.
Yeah. Belgium was according to FIFA rankings, they're like number 2 or 3
Yeah.
in the world, which was they're a very good team. There's a lot of really big stars like Eden Hazard and Kevin De Bruyne and Thibaut Courtois, the goalie. So those are big names, but it seems like maybe their best chances had kind of passed them by a couple of World Cups ago.
Mm.
But yeah, they were still high in the FIFA rankings, and they were beaten.
Was it 2-0 even?
Yeah, 2-1. They lost 2-0 to Morocco. Yeah,
I thought it was 2-0. Yeah.
2-0 to Morocco.
So yeah, to
And
Morocco too, which is seemingly unlikely outcome, right?
yeah, you would think. Well, Morocco is, I guess, one of the better teams in Africa, but yeah, to beat Belgium is a feat, and Belgium, it looks like they have to beat Croatia to advance. Right now, 538 has Belgium's chances of making the round of 16 at 33%. They can still win the group if they win against Croatia. They would have 6 points. And they would, I think that, and then although if Morocco won, they would have 7. So I think Morocco has a 91% chance, right? 538 of making the round of 16. Mexico has only a 16% chance.
Really?
Making it to the rest. They only have 1 point. They tied Poland.
Right.
They lost to Argentina 2-0.
2-0, yeah.
And yeah, they have to. So
Because Saudi had that kind of surprising win, right? Didn't they Saudi won their first game against was it Argentina?
Yeah, they beat Argentina.
So that's what throws everything into the weird scenarios, right?
So right now,
starting with the big upset.
Yeah, so right now Poland is on top of they are +2 goal differential. Mexico is at 1 point, -2. So if Mexico beats Saudi Arabia,
yeah,
they have to make up 4 goals.
Oh wow.
Or they would have to have Poland beat Argentina outright. So Argentina could blow out Poland and Mexico wins, and then they would go through. Or Poland beats Argentina, and Poland and Argentina are the 2 teams that go through. Poland and Mexico are the 2 teams that go through, and Argentina doesn't go through, which is also seems like a long shot. It would be a big flame out for Lionel Messi, who, as it seems like, maybe headed for MLS in the not too distant future.
Possibly. Although the first article I read made it sound like it was a done deal, and I see today that it is not a done deal. It is no agreement has been reached. The last I heard.
Yeah, to Miami.
Yeah,
Inter Miami.
Inter Miami.
No,
with an I. Not Inter.
I remember when they were the Miami Fusion in MLS about 25 years ago, and I think they contracted, and I think that was when Preki, who was the best player, remember him for the Wiz/Wizards, and he went to Miami for like 1 season in the expansion draft or something. I don't know why he went to Miami, but then when Miami died, or he just got traded to Miami or something. I don't know. He went to Miami, and then when Miami contracted, I think they reallocated the players, and he came back to Kansas City.
Okay.
For a year, but now they have Inter Miami. So Messi might be there. He's in Paris Saint-Germain right now, but it seems like nobody's really happy to be in Paris Saint-Germain, other than maybe Mbappe. Yeah. So any other observations on the World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, from the U.S. perspective, I think we should basically just be happy that they're even in it. It's still alive. It's still interesting. to the U.S. fans, right? That's all I really take from. Would not call myself a big soccer fan, but
Yeah, still alive. And also, you could say maybe they have bragging rights for North America, given the fact that Canada's out already. Costa Rica's probably out of it, although they had an interesting win in their game. They've made it a little bit interesting. It's still possible for Costa Rica to go through, but probably not
yeah,
likely.
and they haven't lost any games, right? So
they haven't lost. Yeah, and this is, I think, the first time ever that they've had 2 consecutive clean sheets or shutouts in a World Cup, and it was also the first time, I think, since like 1950 or something, that they shut out a European team when it was the first time in a long time when it was 0-0 against England. So this has been one of their better showings. They've kind of scraped through the groups before, and they were 2002. They made it to the quarterfinals. They haven't replicated their success from the first World Cup, the 1930 World Cup, where they finished as semifinalists. I think they were 3rd place in that one, or 4th place. And so, but maybe they can. 538 gives them a 34% chance to beat the Netherlands.
Do you have a prediction for that game?
I think the Dutch will probably win, but this is not a team. The Dutch are not as good as they've been in the past. They don't have quite the firepower that they did maybe 2 World Cups ago, or 2010 when they made the final against Spain. So they don't have the strikers like they did before. Most of their good players are defensive players, Virgil van Dijk, people like that. So I think if the U.S. gets a goal, they have a shot. Penalties, I guess, who knows, but I would like to see them score something. But I think the Dutch will be very difficult anyway. So if they win, it's a bonus. I think they're expected to lose. So if they lose, it's no big deal. But I think the England is better than the Netherlands, and they already tied England. So who knows?
So you're saying there's a chance?
I think there's a chance. I would say 34% is actually pretty good. It's 1 in 3, so that's not too bad.
There have been much larger upsets in this tournament already.
Yeah. I guess maybe that's there's essentially you saw Argentina lose, you saw Germany lose. A lot of teams have lost this World Cup, so it's one of those things where Australia has made some noise. Belgium's lost a couple of games. Senegal went through into I guess they beat Ecuador today. So I think it's one of those things where soccer is like, there are so few goals that are scored. It's somewhat easy. I think it's easier for an upset to happen.
Well, you would think, but it doesn't always seem that way.
Well, I think it seems like kind of like the NCAA tournament, where it's just one game. In the knockout stages. If you can make it into the knockout stages like this, it seems like it's usually Brazil and France and like all the big teams. They end up, at least 2 or 3 of those big teams end up avoiding the upsets and make it into the final. And so like there are enough of those teams to make it seem like, oh, the rightful winner is going to be there. But I think it's a little like the NCAA tournament, where 2 or 3 of the number 1 seeds are going to make it to the Final Four, even if the other ones are upset. And it seems like, oh, well, Kansas, North Carolina, that was a game everybody thought was coming, but really there was a lot of craziness that led up to it, and it just really means that one team has to win, and it's just it's not necessarily the team that plays.
I didn't think soccer was that big of upsets, at least anyway. At least when the knockout phase starts, maybe some in the group stages, especially when you get like one of those like group of death sort of things.
it's one of those things where like one goal can mean so much. It's
Yeah.
so hard to score, and like a fluke goal can be the difference in a match. And
Hmm.
like
But
if you
usually you have to be fairly decent to even get an attempt at goal. Like, because like a team that's really good is going to dominate the ball like the entire game. They just won't
yeah, there can be a
feel nothing.
handball though involved, penalty kick or something
Yeah.
like that. It's like in hockey, it's so soccer and hockey are similar, but like you need like use 3 or 4 goals usually to win
Hmm.
in hockey. So like one goal is not going to kill you usually.
Yeah.
And soccer
There's
though,
at least time to recover and a chance to recover from
yeah,
a mistake. Yeah.
one goal can be everything. So I think that's the lesson usually, but it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see what plays out in this odd holiday edition of the World Cup. So I guess the United States plays, I think, on Saturday against the Netherlands.
That was going to be the next thing I asked you because I had not looked at when the game was. So good to know.
Yeah, it's at 10 a.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Central. So you got to get up on Saturday.
I'll have to actually get up. Yes, I might. We'll see. So
Yeah.
what are you looking forward to in week 13 of the NFL?
Well, I think there are a lot of interesting matchups. There are a lot of teams that are pretty good going against one another. I think it starts on Thursday with the Bills and Patriots. I'm probably most interested, of course, in the Chiefs Bengals matchup, especially given the recent history between those two teams, where
Mhm.
the Bengals knocked the Chiefs off twice in relatively close succession. One to cost the Chiefs #1 seed in the playoffs, and the second time in the AFC Championship game. Both of
Mhm.
them were big comebacks in the second half. So I think the Chiefs are going to be geared up for that game. It's in Cincinnati. Jamar Chase looks like he's probably going to come back. So it should be a good game. So that's about the game I'm most interested in. Even outside of our betting world, I decided to bet on that game probably because I thought the Chiefs were going to win. But what are you most looking forward to next week?
Yeah,
This
I
week?
know. Yeah, from the betting perspective, it's not much I really wanted to pick. I had to was forced to pick games. I think more than like seeing stuff I like naturally gravitated to. But I know one game is probably not going to be terribly interesting though. Is Bears Packers with the maybe backup quarterbacks on both sides of the ball on that one.
Yeah,
There's some
that
weird
was a
matchups.
Sunday night game at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
and now it's. Do you ever look at the 538 game
Hmm.
ratings?
I don't.
So they have a rating system of
Like strength of game.
strength of game, yeah,
Is that what?
quality
Okay.
importance. Like the Bills Patriots has an 87 quality
Okay.
and then a 91 importance out of 100. So overall, it's an 89. So that's like a big, Bills Patriots. And then like you look at the Bengals Chiefs game, um, it's even higher, I think.
It should be higher, yeah, because they're both teams have relatively high playoff seeds
Yeah.
on the
So
line.
yeah, quality is 97, importance 90, overall 94. So those are like really high
Hmm.
games. And like if you look at the Commanders Giants, the quality they have only 35. They don't think the Giants are that good. But the importance,
But they're both playoff teams though right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
That's kind of surprising.
It's based on the rating. It's based on their ELA ratings.
Yeah.
But it says the importance is 99 in that game because it's a divisional and who's going to be the last, maybe the 6th or 7th seed in the playoffs and stuff like that.
Okay.
So overall, it's 6. So like they have in like the Dolphins 49ers, the quality is high in that game, 90, but the importance is only 45 because it's an inter-conference matchup and both
Yeah.
teams are probably going to make the playoffs either way. But I think the lowest of the low in everything is the Bears Packers. Actually, it's tied with Browns Texans.
Yeah. Well, Jaguars Lions is probably not far off of that one either, is it?
Jaguars. So Bears Packers Browns Texans are both 8 out of 100 in quality, 3 out of 100 in importance. So overall 6 on average.
Wow.
The Jaguars Lions quality is 16, importance is 15. So overall it's about 6. So like it is, they're both really bad.
Yeah.
The Steelers Falcons is similar, 12 quality, 26 importance, overall 19. So I guess the Falcons are still technically in the division race, so the importance is a little bit higher. Whereas I think the Packers and Bears are both basically eliminated from the playoffs already. And even though it's supposed to be a close game, yeah, it's like the worst, tied for the worst game next week. And I would say one of the worst games remaining in the season, maybe the worst. The Cardinals Broncos coming up in a few weeks is pretty bad. Titans.
That one that should, if from the before the season started, you would expect that could be a really high quality matchup, but the season has not played out.
Yeah, you could have guessed that would have been good because both of those teams were playoff contenders.
Yeah,
and of course the Cardinals have made the playoffs before last year, and so yeah, it's it's kind of an interesting little. I think it's interesting to look at what those metrics are. The Chiefs Bengals is the big game. The Colts Cowboys is, interestingly enough, 82 in quality, but only 14 in importance. So it's a 48 average Sunday night game. So it's
even if the Cowboys lose, they don't really drop a whole lot, I don't think, in the overall.
Yeah, it seems like maybe they drop in the division race. They'd be another game behind the Eagles potentially.
Yeah, but I don't think they don't actually like lose a spot really.
No, they're gonna. I think they're still gonna make the playoffs.
I guess they could end up tied with the Giants. I guess.
But they beat the Giants, I think. So yeah, I think they're still.
So overall, it won't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there are some interesting matchups, and that Dolphins 49ers should be interesting. It should be an interesting game.
Yeah. You made a bet on that one, right?
I am making a bet on that one. That's correct. I'm breaking my trend though, going just on spreads. I finally am picking an over under, and I think that's the one to pick the over on. Right now it's for us at the time of this recording. The line is 46.5. And I think that seems like the game could turn into a shootout.
So you went over. I think so too. I think the 49ers have a good defense, but it's teams can't score on them. The Chiefs scored 44 against the 49ers, and I think the Dolphins have a very good offense. So you think the Dolphins can at least score 24, and if the Niners are favored by 3.5, so a 28-24 game would be over.
That's well over,
yeah. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility because the Dolphins don't have a very good defense, and the 49ers offense, it should be pretty good even with Garoppolo, but I guess Elijah Mitchell got hurt, but McCaffrey's still there. So I think that's a solid bet, but you never know. But maybe Tua will fold under the pressure, and it'll be another 13-0 type of snooze fest.
I don't think it's going to be that low, because I think even last week Miami had about 30 points in the first half, I think, right, and then they just didn't score in the second half at all, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were way ahead against the Texans.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Texans, my first bet is on the Texans Browns, one of the lowest quality games we'll see, but it does not that quality matchup does not take into the fact the human interest story that is Deshaun Watson's return to the NFL after almost 2 seasons gone, but also his return to Houston, where the Browns are on the road against the Texans, and what will surely be a hostile environment, I would say, in many ways, for Watson.
I think he was traded though, right? Wasn't it an actual trade, or was he?
He was traded.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be that hostile from that. I mean, they wanted him to be a star there.
Yeah, well, they wanted him gone too once all that stuff happened. So
yeah,
I think Houston has enough sports controversy with it already with the cheating Astros scandal. And I guess also the Rockets' usual, weirdness. And that's, I think the Texans are just terrible. I think this is the one game that I think the fans can get up for, is to maybe beat Watson. That would be their season. I think they would be happy with that. So I'm betting on the Texans keeping it close, at least. So the Texans are +7, I think. I think that's, I don't know. I'm rooting for chaos in that game, really. So I maybe that's more my heart over my head. But given the fact that my head is as wrong as more often than my then it's right. So I mean maybe this sort of wishful fulfillment sort of betting isn't going to do any worse for me. So I have the Texans +7.
Give it a try. Gotta try it. It's a strategy.
Yeah, I think my other two games are a little bit like that too.
Yeah, my second pick is actually on the Thursday night game, so maybe that should have been my first pick. But anyway, Buffalo is favored by 4 points on the road at New England. To me, this seems like a game that like Buffalo has to keep pace with Kansas City. They're playing a day before Kansas City, or 2 days before, 3 days before, whatever, before Kansas City, because it's a Thursday night game. They've got to get the win, I think, to keep the pressure on Kansas City to try to get that 1 seed back. I think they're not going to take any chances and will be trying to make sure they win handily at New England.
Yeah, you could say both of this Thursday game, it's both teams are on a full week's rest, which is unusual because both teams played on Thanksgiving, so neither of them are on a short week. So they have both of them have a full week to prepare. So you would think maybe this game is not going to be as wacky as normal Thursday games because you think they only had 4 days to prepare, and this time Belichick has a week and McDermott has a week to prepare. And divisional games, it's going to be tough. I could see that. Again, I don't have that much trust in the Patriots, given I don't think their offense is very good, and I don't see them.
Well, inconsistent at best, right?
Yeah, their defense has been inconsistent and their offense has been inconsistent.
Yeah.
So occasionally they pull it together on both sides of the football, and they'll have to do that to be able to beat the Bills, I think. So I don't think that's a bad bet.
What's your second pick?
My second pick is, again, another one of my heart picks, maybe, but I also think this in my head, I think, and that is the Chiefs-Bengals game. The Chiefs are favored by 2.5 on the road. I think the Chiefs are really, I think when they really want to win, they do win in games that are, I think they felt this way against Tampa when they went to Tampa Bay earlier this season. I think when they played the 49ers, when they play good opponents on the road, I think they really want to show up, and they tend to play down to their level of the opponents a lot, especially at home. So I think maybe on the road against a very good Bengals team who is kind of on a roll like Chiefs. I think the Chiefs also want to keep pace above the Bills, especially if the Bills win. They don't want to, they don't want to tie the Dolphins. Either one of them both of them are in the battle for the number 1 seed right now. And the Chiefs, I think, want to stay at least 1 game above Buffalo, 1 game above Miami, and then two above, Cincinnati, Baltimore. Those teams. So I think the number 1 seed is a really important, really more important than it has, been in years past because it's the only bye. So yeah. I think there's a sort of a revenge game for Mahomes and company. So I like
they do seem to come out very motivated in some of these games. You can see, like, right from the first few plays of the game, if Mahomes has that intensity that he had against in the beginning of the San Francisco game, especially, it was like another level.
Yeah,
you can tell they're really going after it. I think they're going to do that again too.
I think this is I like the Chiefs here. I think Jamar Chase is back, so it's really the Bengals at full strength. But at least maybe Mixon is still iffy, but the running game they didn't use the running game much against the Chiefs. So it was just Burrow throwing deep to Higgins and to Chase and to the other receiving targets. But I think the Bengals are coming off a big win on the road, so maybe they're feeling a little very confident as well. So it's going to be a tough game. So, but I still like the Chiefs on the road. It's less than a field goal, so I like them to win. So, yeah.
That's one of the nice things for this particular game is the Chiefs tend to be dealing with these large spreads, so trying to bet on the Chiefs with a spread is more difficult than just winning. Mm-hmm. Although they did cover last week, even though they had a much
I think the spread is a little lower than it would be otherwise, because I think if the Chiefs had blown out the Rams 43-10 or something like that, the spread would be higher. So I think maybe we're getting a little bit of value on the Chiefs on the road. I think they left a lot of points on the board against the Rams and still covered. They won't be able to do that against the Bengals. They'll have to convert some of those field goals into touchdowns, but I think they can do that if they actually want to score touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be gentlemanly and just try to avoid embarrassing this team.
Let's hope, as Chiefs fans.
Mm-hmm.
My third pick, I went to the Monday night game coming up, Saints at Bucks. Tampa Bay is favored by 3.5 points. Another division rivalry there. I do think Tampa's going to have to play well enough to maintain their division lead, and they're going to want to make sure to win this game, I think, too. So I'm taking Tampa minus 3.5.
Yeah, I think that's a good game. Even though New Orleans since Brady has been at Tampa, has really played Tampa Bay tough. I don't know if it didn't seem to be the case as much this last couple of games, but yeah, I think at home, especially coming off the loss, I think Tampa Bay wants to really win the division. So I think that's a solid bet as well. Unless maybe I don't know. Who's the quarterback for New Orleans? They didn't score any points last week. Mm-hmm. They've been pretty bad lately.
It's not enough Taysom Hill, I think. It's pretty much what their problem's been. Is that safe to make that statement?
Well, they haven't gone to Taysom Hill much these last several weeks. He had that one breakout game that cost me a few weeks, maybe 6-7 weeks ago.
Yeah,
but maybe was that the Seattle game when they beat the Seahawks 39-32 or something like that. 6-7 weeks.
He's been pretty quiet since then, though.
Yeah, Hill is. Let's see what his stats are. So on the season, Hill only has 31 yards receiving. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think he's been catching any passes. I don't think they've been throwing to him very much. But I don't think they've been handing it off to him very much either. So I don't know if he's
he's got 409 yards rushing, averaging over 7 yards a carry.
I think a lot of that was early though. I don't think he's been getting many carries the last few weeks anyway.
In the last 5 games, he's only gotten 133 yards.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they haven't gone to him lately.
But I don't think they've been using him as a quarterback like at all. Like I don't think he even comes on like under Wildcat formations. I don't think they've been using those.
Yeah, it's I don't. Yeah, they've given all the money that they're paying him. They aren't trying to use him.
Yeah.
So maybe this is his breakout game, but I think that's a safe bet with the Buccaneers. I'm staying with NFC teams at home like you are. for my third pick, I'm picking the Vikings, who are -3 over the Jets, surprising Jets, led by quarterback Mike White, who has supplanted Zach Wilson. Do you think White should challenge for the starting role in New York?
And if it's based off of the last 2 weeks, it's already his to lose, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, Zach Wilson was terrible a couple weeks ago, and
His team averaged about 3 inches per play
in a half of football.
Yeah.
And said some not great responses, at least in a press conference afterwards. And then was replaced. Mike White threw for 325 yards.
Yeah, he 3 touchdowns. He had 150 quarterback rating.
Yeah.
So he's been very productive when he has played. And maybe it really shows that Zach Wilson's not very good.
Yeah. I mean, the hope if you're the franchise is that, even if a quarterback isn't performing to what you expect them to, they'd at least not say anything that they don't want to hear in a press conference after a game is over, right? So at least say the thing you're supposed to say to appease the franchise, right, and the fan base. But I mean, he didn't go after anybody, but he wasn't willing to accept any responsibility, I guess.
No.
For his performance.
Yeah, Zach Wilson on the year has thrown for 1,279 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 picks, quarterback rating of 72.6. So not.
It's just been really safe though, right? It's not been. That's not. I mean, those aren't horrible numbers, but they're not. There's not any chances being taken with numbers like that, right? So.
No, he hasn't had one game as good as what White had. It wasn't just. Yeah, so I think though that the game that White had is not indicative of his future play. I think maybe he's better than Wilson, but I think on the road against the Vikings, who are a better team, and I think they're coming off a Thanksgiving win, so they have a longer rest than the Jets do. And it's Vikings favored by 3 at home. Really, that says the Vikings and the Jets are sort of be even on a neutral field, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think the NFC is as good as the AFC, but I don't think the Jets are really that good. I don't think their offense is good enough.
But do you think Minnesota actually is that good either?
I don't know. I think Minnesota's. I think Minnesota's better. I think Minnesota is probably the 3rd best team in the NFC
North.
I think the NFC as a whole. I think San Francisco and Philadelphia are better. I don't know if there's any other team that maybe Dallas, since the way they played, but I think you could make an argument that at least they're a top 3 to 4 team.
Yeah.
NFC. I don't think there's any chance really that you could say the Jets are a top 3 to 4 team in the AFC. I'm not even sure if you would say the Jets are top. I don't think, for even the teams that are on the outside of the playoffs looking in, I don't think the Jets are better than the Chargers. I don't think
they're only separated by 1 spot in the.
Yeah, I don't think they're better. I don't think they're better than Cincinnati. I don't think they're better than Baltimore. They're not better than Kansas City. They're not better than Buffalo, even though they beat the Bills. I don't. So I think the Jets may be at best are the 6th or 7th best team in the AFC, and they're not better than Tennessee.
They're 7th right now by playoff seeding, if it ended right now, right?
Yeah.
So
those top 6 maybe above them, and the Chargers maybe, and maybe you might even say the Patriots are about as good as the Jets.
So maybe not third in the AFC, but 3rd in the AFC East is.
I guess I didn't even say the Dolphins. We didn't even say the Dolphins. So
yeah.
I think the Jets are a pleasant surprise, but I don't think they're. I think the Vikings are more of a playoff team. They've been, other than maybe last year, they've been a solid NFC team for a few years now. So I think maybe more than a few years. They're always decent. So I think the Vikings at home. They laid an egg at home against Dallas, and then they played a little better at home against New England. So this is a third consecutive home game. So they were relaxed. They've been around. It seems like I don't know. I like the Vikings here. I guess I'm talking myself into it. I feel a little bad. I think the Mike White experience. I think still he's maybe better than Wilson, but I don't think he's.
Has he been named the starter going forward for now, or is it?
I think so. And it's. I don't know if Wilson's going to be he was the third. He was bumped out to the third quarterback, behind Flacco. I think Flacco played better this season than Wilson has too. So it seems like it's maybe not the Jets' scheme, but it's maybe Wilson's fault that they don't do so well. But I still don't think the Jets are that great. So.
Yeah. I guess we'll see what happens.
Find out
this weekend.
Yeah. Any other games that look good to you?
For some reason I'm still curious about this Packers Bears game. I don't know why. I know it's like a disastrous thing, but for some reason I'm interested in the guy. I'm curious to see what teams do when neither team has a game plan. Everything's thrown out, right? Like the way that they pictured their seasons with the quarterback they have, once that's thrown out, how do they adapt to that situation? And I'm just curious to see what happens with it. I don't expect it to be a good game, but it should be interesting to see how it plays out anyway.
Yeah. I'm not really looking forward to that one, but I could see why you might be. I think there are a couple.
Rooting for chaos is what it is, right?
I think there are a couple of games that we haven't talked about, but or at least interesting games. The Commanders at the Giants. I think we talked about the Giants as being a potential playoff team, but if they lose at home to the Commanders, they might not be a playoff team. And
they have Commanders that weird scenario where who do they play the week after this?
Yeah, they play the Commanders next, so they would have to go to Washington. So you would think that the team that lost at home would lose on the road as well, but maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much of a home field advantage in Washington. I don't think, but maybe they've been surging under Heineke, and there's also the Titans Eagles game. I think is interesting too, especially with the Titans coming off a loss, and the Eagles still kind of rolling over their relatively weak opponents. I think, the last time they played a decent team at home, they lost. When they lost to the Commanders. So I think the Titans are much better than the Commanders, and I think they could really give a. And also, I don't think the Titans can be run all over in the way that the Eagles like to run. So it would have to pass a lot, and I'm not sure the Eagles defense and the Titans is very good, and I don't know if the Eagles passing offense is good if the running game is not working. So I'm still kind of bearish on the Eagles.
Yeah.
This will go, I think, go a long way to see if the Eagles are legit.
Yeah. There were a couple other division rivalry games that you'd think before the season started should be really interesting, but they're not, like Chargers, Raiders.
Well, you can say the Chargers. If the Chargers lose, I think their playoff hopes are really take a
significant hit. Anyway,
significant dent. And if the Raiders win, you can say, well, maybe the Raiders have an outside. They'd be 5-7.
Yeah,
the Chargers would be 6-6. Maybe the Raiders can.
They could be caught.
They can finish. Who knows? They play the Chiefs. They have that last game with the Chiefs. Maybe you would say, well, the Chiefs have the number 1 seed locked up, and the Raiders are 9-7. If they somehow go on a roll, would they be able to be 10-7 and sneak into the playoffs?
Possible.
That's the. So the Raiders, who do they play? So they have winnable games. Home Home against if they beat the Chargers, they play at the Rams. I think that's winnable.
Winnable.
Home against the Patriots,
Probably
which would be an
possible. It's not,
interesting game.
yeah.
At the Steelers, so the Steelers aren't that great.
Yeah.
Home against the 49ers might be really tough.
That's the toughest of those games that you've listed off so far.
Yeah. And then home against the Chiefs to finish.
Yeah. So that's a really tough end to that streak that they need.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule.
But not impossible.
Yeah. I'd say they kind of screwed up the easier part of their schedules. Like once they beat the Texans, at the Saints, at the Jaguars, against the Colts, you think they should have probably won at least 2 out of those 3 games.
Yeah.
And they lost all 3.
Yeah.
And that really including a shutout at New Orleans. So that really sunk, I think, their chances. But if the Chargers win, I think the Chargers are probably a playoff team, and maybe that saves Staley's job. The Chargers' schedule is pretty tough as well, though. At least a couple games. They have at the Raiders, and home against the Dolphins, home against the Titans. Both of those 2 teams are pretty good. At the Colts, who knows? Home against the Rams, at Broncos. So, they have a fairly easy finish, but they really have to get through the next 3 games. If they win the next 3, you could almost see them winning out.
Mm-hmm.
And finishing 12-5, which would
is a certain wild card.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd have to be. Yeah.
Or even if they win 2 out of the next 3, 11-6 is going to get them in.
Yeah, most likely. And then that other interesting game, it seems weird. Like they seem to be like totally flipped from where you would have expected them anyway. Seahawks at Rams.
Yeah, we thought the Rams would be good, repeating Super Bowl champions, and the Seahawks were going to be terrible since they traded away Russell Wilson and they're, we're starting Geno Smith. But the Seahawks are still fighting for a playoff position.
6-5, even, which isn't bad. But you definitely would not have predicted the Rams at 3-8, right?
Yeah, and also I think, and especially Stafford's out, maybe for the rest of the season. Cooper Kupp's out the rest of the season, probably.
And they're maybe facing a tough several years, even.
They don't have draft pick reinforcements.
Trade away.
They really need to hit on every draft pick in their low draft picks. So it's the Seahawks have a schedule where they could still. So they have the Rams, Panthers next 2 games, pretty winnable. Then 49ers, Chiefs, Jets. Those 3 games are going to be tough for them, especially the first 2. Home against the Jets, I think they could take care of, and then the Rams at home again. So I think they have realistically a chance of winning 4 out of those 6 games. So they could finish 10-7 in the playoffs. It might depend on what the NFC East is doing and things like that. But it's really. Strange, some strange scenarios, I think, especially from what we thought at the beginning of the year.
Just because you mentioned Carolina and their Matt Rule was fired from there earlier this season. Did you see where he may end up?
He was hired as the new Nebraska head coach. So I think he's been a good college coach. He was good at Temple, he was good at Baylor, and was really good at instituting solid turnarounds of programs that were on the skids. So maybe that's what Nebraska needs. Although they said that maybe about the last hire when Scott Frost got hired.
Yeah.
But maybe having an outsider, a non-Nebraska person coming in.
Yeah.
Nebraska's pretty insular, but it's also it's a chance for Rule to really be like a huge hero. And have a whole state kind of idolize him.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know what the Big Ten's going to be like, but right now they're in the West, which is not nearly as good as the Eastern part of the Big Ten. They don't have Ohio State. They don't have Michigan. Penn State, the top 3 teams are on the other side. Wisconsin's down, the rest of them, but maybe if USC and UCLA come in. Maybe they'll get rid of the divisions or do something different. But
Yeah.
I think Nebraska has I think they could be the best. I don't think it's that hard to be the best team out of the western half of the Big Ten.
And he has, kind of an interesting scheme, at least anyway, what he did at Baylor with the, pretty dynamic offenses. So it'd be nice to see Nebraska try to, bring something like that in, and it may be enough to, push them at least into the middle of the pack in a year or so.
Yeah, and a lot of those college coaches, they don't do it well in the NFL. They still do very well in college. There's like Nick Saban didn't do so well in the NFL,
right?
And Lane Kiffin and people like that, or Chip Kelly.
Kiffin done well anywhere?
Well, Kiffin's doing pretty well. I guess at Ole Miss now, he's doing very well.
There was talk that he may skip town. Did you hear that?
Go to Auburn, yeah.
Auburn, he didn't get picked there anyway. But
I think he said that he didn't want it. I don't know.
I know, but there was enough talk about it because has a tradition of
leaving.
Of just abandoning jobs that he has, and frequently leaving the franchise or whatever in pretty bad disarray on the way out.
This other, like, Urban Meyer was terrible in the pros. He was good in college, or Bobby Petrino. These kind of scandalous coaches that were kind of good college coaches, but not good in the NFL. So I think maybe Rule can.
Whatever you hear Bobby Petrino, you picture the press conference with the neck brace, right? Is that?
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else except that. That's all I can picture, though. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that the only college coach that had success in the NFL was Jim Harbaugh. And that's why
Seattle's coach too, right?
Pete Carroll, I guess. Yeah,
because they were Harbaugh and he were against each other, right, in the Pac-12. And then,
I guess he was. I guess was he at Stanford still then? I
think Stanford and USC, right, were the two.
Yeah.
Weren't they head coaches there, and then they ended up facing off against each other? Yeah. In the
NFL. Yeah, I guess so. Carroll had some success in college. And he can go back to.
He's a good back though, right? Yeah.
Jimmy Johnson and people like that were good in college, and then too. But it's been a little while since they've had a successful coach coming from the college ranks. Usually it's usually assistants. Kingsbury hasn't been so good in Arizona.
He was kind of good, and then not, and then
their teams have faded. Like, they do really well at the beginning of the season, maybe because there's only 11 games in the college season, and then they fade at the end. I don't know.
Yeah. I think just from the coaching perspective, it's so different. I think if you're good at recruiting, then you're going to be at least okay in college, right? But you don't need to recruit like you do in the pros. So, like, if that's your skill set, it's going to be unused at the pro level. So like guys like Saban and Jim Harbaugh are both apparently really good at recruiting, because their teams are always incredible in college. So every year, it doesn't matter how many years in a row, you typically, it's a 4-year cycle for college football, and those teams don't go on 4-year cycles. They're good every year. So they have to be good at recruiting if they're having perennially good teams.
That's true.
But that isn't the same strategy in the pros.
No, because
the biggest recruiting thing is probably getting ready for like the number 1 draft pick.
Yeah, maybe bringing some free agents or something, but
is going to go number 1. You can get him to go. A few free agents, but the team isn't built entirely on free agents. There's so many players on a team that
the talent levels are so similar in the NFL. It's really it's more X's and O's, and sometimes just having one superior player like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or Aaron Donald on the defensive sides or something like that can really.
And knowing how to use your timeouts. Final 2 minutes of the game.
Oh, Jeff Saturday. Maybe he'll learn next week. He did sort of change his tune. He said he wasn't. He
should have used them. Yeah.
Should have used them. Yeah. And maybe my guess is that he didn't know he had 3 timeouts. I think maybe he only thought he had 1 timeout. Maybe that's what it was. But You can see him up on the scoreboard how many timeouts there are.
Right.
One of those things.
You'd think that's what somebody on the other end of that headset would be, saying that to him on the sideline too.
Yeah.
But apparently not. Somebody
Wow.
needs to just be in charge of making that known, I think. Quality
Should we-
control.
Should we call timeout now and end our weekly discussion?
Sounds good.
Okay. I think I'm looking forward to next week in both the NFL and also in the World Cup, and we'll see how Team USA does and see how the Chiefs and our other betting picks do next week, and how just how the standings shake out after another week of NFL football. I think it'll be a fun weekend. It's starting to get really into crunch time, so when the playoffs start to take shape. So we'll have only a few more weeks of the regular season of the Warning Track Power Hour, but I hope to see everybody back here again next week. And until then, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our podcast or our YouTube channel. And on that note, I bid you good day.